Today, so we're making gnocchi. Sorry, not sure. I'm pretty sure I did say that at the beginning, but let's reiterate. So in your pack, you got 1 kilo of Desiree potatoes. These are floury potatoes, and we use these potatoes to make gnocchi because with floury potatoes, there's a high concentration of starch and lower moisture. And moisture is kind of the nemesis of gnocchi. We don't want any moisture in there, otherwise your gnocchi falls apart. Now, this is why I actually asked you to bake your potatoes rather than boil them, because it's easier to keep the moisture away when they're in a hot oven rather than when they're in a pot of salted water on your cooktop. So I've kind of just launched right in because we need to peel these while they're still hot. What we're going to do today, we're just going to run through the steps of the recipes that you received. I think it's don't be daunted by gnocchi. People kind of think that any kind of pasta must be really difficult, but actually it's kind of the selection and the cooking of the potato that's going to be the hardest, that was the hardest part. Once you've kind of avoided the dreaded moisture, you're all good with gnocchi. Now, I'm putting my peels into a clean bowl. I want to tell you this before I forget, because I do go all over the shop sometimes. I'm putting my peels into a clean bowl because we don't have to discard potato peel. In this era of lessening food wastage and using as much of, plants and animals as we possibly can, one of my favorite things in the world is to take these potato skins, and you'll see you're getting kind of nice big pieces like that. Take the potato skins, toss them in a little bit of olive oil, splash of olive oil, bit of salt and pepper, pop them into a hot oven, like a 200-degree oven, for about 13 minutes, and you are going to have the nicest potato skin crisps of your life. It's really yummy, and it means there's less food waste. So I used to always put my potato skins in the compost. Now they actually go back into the oven, and we have potato chips. So keep that in mind. That's a really fun thing to do. Now there we go, finished peeling our potatoes. So we've got 1 kilo here. That's probably going to be enough for a serve for 4 adults. The great thing about gnocchi is that if you're not going to eat it all on the day that you're preparing it, it freezes really, really well. So I'll tell you at what point we can do that. So I'll pop that there. That there. Excellent. Now in your packs, you received a masher. So this is the time that we're going to use our masher. We want to mash our potato while it's hot, because if you wait until it's cold, it's going to be gummy, and we don't want gummy. We want it to be as light and fluffy and airy as possible. So let's give it a really good mash. I don't know about you, but this mash is a little bit flexible, which is good and bad, I guess. Now, the reason we use floury potatoes for gnocchi is that when they cook, the starch expands, and that gives us a firmer, that takes away from the moisture, and we end up with a better, fluffier result. Floury potatoes always give us a fluffy result. So they're fantastic for mash. They're fantastic for gnocchi. They're a good all-rounder. They're a great roasting potato too. Gnocchi originally was made on semolina when the Romans kind of went into expand into Europe, and it wasn't until probably the 16th century, until potatoes were introduced to Italy, that we started using potatoes in gnocchi. But absolutely delicious. You don't have to make gnocchi on potato. You can make it on, if you make it on ricotta, That's actually called malfatti. Or you can make it on pumpkin, all sorts of different things. But I think most common, and when you go out or when you buy gnocchi, it's generally made on potato. So I think that's pretty good. Now, traditionally, if you are making a lot of gnocchi, what I would say would be to invest in a ricer. A ricer is like a big garlic press. You pop your potato in, squeeze it down, comes out the bottom exactly like a garlic press, but it's for potato. So if you love this recipe, then I would say a ricer is a fantastic way to go, but mashing does a fantastic job. So let's draw a line under that. I think that's good. Pop that in there. So we've got our potatoes mashed. We are now going to add our flour and our eggs and bring our dough together. So first thing we do, always, bit of salt. Nice healthy bit of salt there. In your pack, you got 150 grams of plain flour or 150 grams of rice flour if you're making gluten-free gnocchi. So we're just going to pop that in, all of that in. So you will see a lot of recipes that have a lot more flour in them. The more flour that you have in gnocchi, the heavier it's going to be. So we try to use as little flour as possible, okay? This will be enough. I guess people use more flour because it makes the gnocchi easy to roll, but I have confidence in all of you. I think that you'll be able to do it. So into our potato and our flour, we're going to pop 2 egg yolks. So if you haven't separated an egg before, strap yourself in, this is really fun. Just gonna break the egg. I'm gonna pop my fingers into that crack, open it up. You can see the egg white drizzle out. I'm gonna pop my yolk into the other part of the shell. Now it doesn't matter if you get a little bit of the white in with your egg yolk. It's just if we predominantly use yolks, it gives us a richer end result, and that's what I love. Now also, we don't throw away our egg whites, we keep them, and we can either put them in an omelette, we can bake some cookies with them, make a meringue, although with 2 egg whites in it, probably not going to make meringue. There we go. So we've got our 2 egg yolks in there. I'm not going to wash my hands because what I'm now going to do is I'm going to bring the dough together. Now, if you don't like to get your hands dirty, definitely use a spoon. I would suggest a big metal spoon because you want something really solid to kind of work those ingredients in. But at the same time, I want you to think about using a really light touch. We want to get everything mixed together, but we want to do it with a really light hand, because the more the heavier you are with your gnocchi, the heavier the gnocchi will be. So I'm just going to pop my hands in there, get the flour into the egg yolks, and just really gently bring it all together. Need nice, I guess the bigger the bowl, the easier this is. You can see that coming together. You can see bits of the egg yolk. How are you guys doing? Are you with me? I think you'll be fine. So you can see the reason we also don't do this as soon as the eggs are out of the oven, potatoes are out of the oven, is that we don't want them too hot to actually cook the egg, because that's always a possibility as well. So you can see that that's come together really, really quickly. So just folding that through just a little, just to make sure that's come together as a dough. There we go. And now I will wash my hands. It's time, yeah? So take that. Okay. there we go. Now, I'm going to keep this, the tray that I had my potatoes on, I'm just going to keep it at the side there because we're actually going to put our gnocchi on that once we form them. I'm just going to turn that paper over so that that's nice and fresh. You would have received a small container of rice flour in your kit. This is what we're going to use for rolling. Now, if in future, when you make this recipe, you don't have to use rice flour. You can use plain flour. Oh, sorry, my nose has decided to run. That's not cool. So let's wipe that. I'll give my hands another wash. Okay. So you can use plain flour to roll. You can use plain flour to roll your gnocchi. I just like the rice flour. I think it kind of helps seal against moisture. So that's why I've chosen that today. So what I'm going to do is put a bit of rice flour on the surface. I'm going to rub that around. I'm going to get some on my hands. I'm going to put my dough into a ball. I could have said this before actually. I'm going to cut it into about 8 pieces. And what that's going to do is to help me when I'm rolling it so that it's not too big to roll. Oh, what have I forgotten? Well, what I have forgotten, we're going to leave this dough right here. I'm going to cover the rest of my dough so that it doesn't dry out. Sorry guys, you're going to have to wash your hands again if you're in line with me, because we want to put our water on to boil and we want to put our ovens back on for the pancetta and the mushrooms. So let's do that. Okay, so I have a big pan here, a really big pot here. I've got it 75% full of water. Now I'm going to put that on high and bring that up to the boil. Lid on, because that will happen a lot quicker with the lid on. And I'm not going to put salt in that actually until it comes to the boil. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the oven back onto 200 so that we preheat it for our pancetta and mushrooms. Okay, so it should still be fairly hot from the potatoes, so it won't take long to come up to temperature. Okay, excellent. Now I'm going to move our rubbish to the side and make some space for rolling our dough. So we're going to put our hands, our clean hands, back into our rice flour. And we're going to roll, we're just going to pat the pastry together gently so that you've got a bit of a sausage, okay? Now it's still warm. We're going to take it and take the palm of our hand and roll that sausage, okay? So what we want to do is put really gentle downward pressure on it. We don't want to go really heavy. We just want to do it really gently. I should have said, I hope you like getting your hands dirty with food, because we definitely feel our food when we're making gnocchi. So it's coming into a sausage shape. Now we want it to be about 2 centimeters in diameter. So about that. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to roll that up to the top there and leave that, let that sit. And I'm going to grab another piece of dough. Now, if this is the first time that you're doing it, I'll just move this here. It does get easier. The more you do it, the more you get the feel for it, the easier it becomes. Okay, so you can see that I'm just rolling that lightly under my palm. There we go. And you kind of want to do it so that it's not too much longer than the span of your 2 hands with your fingers extended. And that way you have control over it. So again, I'm going to pop that up the top. It's a little bit thinner tiny bit thinner and shorter than my first one. That's because my dough wasn't cut into completely even pieces, but that's okay. So again, a bit more rice flour. We're going to pop that into the palms, down onto the workbench. And roll that out. It's a fun thing to do if you had the kids at home. Okay, there we go. Now, we're almost at the point where you can freeze your gnocchi. Well, actually, we're going to, there's a few steps, but we only cook as much gnocchi as we're actually going to eat on the day. We don't generally have gnocchi as a leftover. So if you're planning on, there's my oven, we can hear that beeping, it's come up to temperature. If you're planning on not eating all of the gnocchi today, we will freeze it once we've cut it. And what you do is you let it freeze for about 3 to 4 hours and it becomes completely solid. You freeze it on a tray so that it's nice and flat and they're all separated. And then after about 3 or 4 hours, you can take it off the tray and you can pop it in a Ziploc bag and bingo bango, you have homemade gnocchi ready for another meal. And basically you don't defrost the gnocchi when you're cooking it from frozen. When it's frozen and you want to cook it, you actually cook it from frozen, because if you defrosted it, it would all end up sticking together and that wouldn't be very good. How's everyone going with their rolling? We can actually sprinkle a bit more rice flour on there to make sure that it doesn't stick. And this is why we tend to make a fair serving of gnocchi when we're doing it, because it does take a little bit of time to roll it out. It's not a 15-minute meal. So better to do it all at once, and then you've got a stash in the freezer. Okay. There's lots of, you will find that whenever people talk about gnocchi, there's lots of different gadgets that you can use, like the ricer, like a shaper, a gnocchi paddle that I will show you in a minute. You don't actually need all of that stuff to make gnocchi. It makes life a little bit easier, but you certainly don't need it to make the gnocchi. You can do very well with the regular things that you have in your home kitchen. Okay, a little bit more rice flour. See how it's not completely sticking to my hands? If I hadn't have washed my hands after I mixed the dough together, they would be a complete disaster right now. But once the dough has actually come together and then you flour your hands, you don't have the same issues. So making gnocchi is really different to making any other kind of pasta. Well, it is and it isn't, but the rolling is very different. And generally we don't use potato in any other kind of pasta. There we go. Ooh. Now, last one, lucky last. I might have to have a sip of Prosecco to let you guys catch up with me, if in fact you need to, once I've done this. Okay. There we go. So there I have my 8 different sections of gnocchi rolled. And I am going to, you can see I'm just playing with them just a fraction, not too heavily, just to make sure that they're kind of the diameter that I want. The length doesn't matter quite so much because I can cut them individually or I can cut them together. It's really the diameter that we're after. Now, and when we cut them, it's completely a personal preference on how big you want to cut your gnocchi. Normally it's not more than 3 centimeters. Most of the time people say 2. I like to err on the smaller side because I think it's really nice just to have a mouthful, not too big a mouthful, of this pillowy goodness. So I'm going to wash my hands again. Get all that dough off. And now we want to cut our gnocchi. There's a cool way to do this. We're going to take our knife. We're going to pop it in a bit of flour. We always want to be careful when we're using knives. So I'm going to pop that on there. The sharper your knife, the better. And I don't say that from just from a cutting perspective. I say that from a safety perspective. The sharper your knife is, the less pressure you're going to place on it. And that makes for a safer environment. So when I cut the gnocchi, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the middle of my blade and I'm going to cut down and then I'm going to flick it out. And that way your gnocchi isn't kind of sticking together in the sausage, okay? That's why I put the flour on my knife. Doesn't have to be a sharp knife. You could do this with a butter knife if you wanted to. You could also try it with a paring knife, okay? But we're just gonna cut down. See, I've got there probably about 2 centimeters, and we're just gonna go down and flick it out. It's really fun actually. And that's why I'm doing 2 at a time. It kind of, see, that one's a bit bigger. There we go. Flicking it out. I'm going to cut that one in half. Once we've cut our gnocchi, what we're going to do is pop it onto the tray that you had your potatoes on with a bit of paper underneath. So we don't want them to stick. So even though it's got the paper on there, I'm going to put a little bit of flour and transfer the gnocchi onto the baking tray. Now, I hope that you guys had your equipment all set up. I've just realized that I haven't really given you too much of a heads up about what you're going to need. So I did say in the instructions, you know, please have them to hand. But if you didn't, there'll be a bit of time to catch up. I did say I was going to have some Prosecco, didn't I? Maybe now's the time. Hopefully I cook better than I pour Prosecco. Okay. I'd like to say that it's my first time, but it's not. Cheers, guys. Now it's a celebration. Yes. Okay, so being a chef, I have to wash my hands again. Right. Is everyone doing okay with the cutting? How are you finding the flick? I think the flick is a really good tip, because if you don't do the flick, doesn't really matter what you call it. If you cut straight down, see, it just stays there. So if you cut down and flick out, just means that you have a better run. Also, just another tip, really safe way to hold your knife. If you put your index finger at the base on one side and your thumb on the other, your 3 fingers around the handle of your knife, that's a really solid grip on your knife. You'll find that leads to less accidents. I see people putting their index finger along the top of their knife. You don't have as much control. It's actually, it's a little bit dangerous. Let's just say that. Okay, so we're gonna cut down and out, flip them out. I can hear my water boiling behind me. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that as well, or can hear yours. So let's do that. Let's get these onto our tray. We're going to sprinkle a little bit more rice flour over them. But all the while, I just want you to keep in mind a really light hand. Have to be gentle with it. We can still make it do what we want it to do, but it's all about being gentle. And you will be rewarded with the texture of your gnocchi. You will find that it's as light as air if you've had that light touch with it. It's so different. Homemade gnocchi is so different to anything that you would buy in the supermarket, even in the, you know, the fresh packets. And certainly the, you know, those freeze-dried packets as well. So if you can see, that is how my gnocchi tray is looking at the moment. I'm going to sprinkle a little more rice flour on here. There we go, to make sure they don't stick. If I was going to freeze my gnocchi, that is how I would put it in the freezer for 3 hours. So I would take that, pop it in, leave it for 3 to 4 hours. Once it's rock solid, then I would put it in a Ziploc bag, and you could store it for a couple of months as long as there's no air in the bag. Okay, so that's we're halfway through. Now let's get the 2 long ones and pop them together. And we're just going to keep on. Oh. No, I thought it was getting excited, but it's not. I can hear some splashing. Let's see what that is. I'm just going to take that away, and there we go. Grab some paper towel. There we go. I think that we had some water coming out of the lid and going down onto my cooktop, and it's an induction cooktop, so it's completely sensitive. Okay, so we're cutting, we're flicking, we're having fun. Doesn't matter if they're not exactly 2 centimeters. It's all about the inspiration, right? Okay, so you can make gnocchi with pumpkin. Generally, if you made it with pumpkin, you would not be cutting it like this. You would actually, when it's really soft, you would take 2 spoons. You've probably seen it on MasterChef, how they do a quenelle, where you shape the gnocchi with the 2 spoons and you get like a little conical shape, like that. It's not quite conical. Okay, what I'm going to do with this last lot is take a big strainer, if you've got one, something like this, and I'm going to pop the gnocchi in there. And the reason I'm going to do that is, I'll pop a bit of rice flour in as well. The reason I'm going to do that is I want to be able to have an easy way to get all the gnocchi into the pot at one time. I don't want to kind of throw them in individually and having hot water come up and splash me in the face. That's not very pleasant. This way, if I take this over to the pot, gently encourage them into the water, it's safe and it's quick and it's effective. So last few, cut and flick, cut and flick, cut and flick, and we're done. So a bit more rice flour here. I was going to say you can't have too much rice flour, but maybe you can. That's good. It's nice and light. I can hear that water boiling behind me now. I'm going to take that lid off. I'm not quite ready to put them in, but we want it ready for when we are. That makes no sense at all. We want it boiling for when we are. So I'm going to take this scraper and hopefully not make too much of a horrendous noise and just get that excess flour away from there. There we go. Give my knife a quick rinse. The hard part's done. Okay, now's the fun part, if that wasn't fun enough for you. Okay, clean my knife, pop this back over here. Now, what we're going to do is take this off. That is boiling furiously. I'm going to turn that down for just a second. Mop up that water because otherwise the induction is going to freak out. I'm going to take some salt, pop it into my boiling water. Don't be scared to salt your water when you're cooking pasta. You want a lot of salt in there. An Italian friend once told me that you want your pasta cooking water to be as salty as the sea. No, I've just been asked, should we put all the gnocchi in at once? No, we should not. We don't want them to stick together. We don't want them to, if we put an entire kilo's worth of potato gnocchi into the pot at the one time, it would bring down the temperature of the water. It would take them longer to cook. It would allow more water to kind of penetrate it and to get a bit soggy. So we don't want that. Just take another little sip of Prosecco. I feel like Keith Floyd right about now. Okay, so I've turned that down just a fraction. Before we start cooking our gnocchi, there's a few other things that we want to do. I want to show you, we're making rustic gnocchi today. So we're going to leave our little beautiful pillows as is, but if you make it again, oops, sorry guys. I want to show you a couple of things that you can do. So, as I said before, there's always gadgets in the kitchen. This is a gnocchi paddle. This puts the indentations on the gnocchi that help it retain sauce. So it depends kind of what sauce you're making, how much trouble you want to go to. Now, this is great. A fork can do just as well. What we want to do is pop some flour, I'm using rice flour, onto the gnocchi paddle. I'll show you the paddle and then I'll show you the fork. So we take our piece of gnocchi, we press our thumb into the gnocchi, kind of gently though, and then we roll it over. And it just kind of uses gravity to fall. See that? So you kind of get an indentation on the bottom and you get the little divots on the top. So beautiful. That's with a gnocchi paddle. Absolutely lovely. But if you don't have one, which I'm guessing most of you will not, I'm going to put some flour on my fork. How you want to hold it, completely up to you. You can hold it like that or you can hold it like that. Personal preference, whether you're, they say that helps you with gravity, but I kind of prefer it this way. So hold your fork nice and steady. Again, same principle. You press your thumb into the middle of the gnocchi and you let the tines make the indentation. So I'll do it the other way. This may be easier if you're doing it for the first time to actually, oh, there we go. So press your thumb into the middle, give it a helping hand, and then it rolls down and you've got those beautiful indentations. So there we go. Now, it would take quite a while to actually do all of these for the, if you're rolling them for the first time. So we're actually not going to shape all of these, but I just wanted to show you how to do it if you would like to do it in the future. You'll need to keep flouring your fork as well, or your gnocchi paddle. I just picked this up at my local Italian deli. I think they cost less than a tenner, but a fork does a great job anyway. So I hope you've had a go. It's kind of a fun thing to do. It's therapeutic. I find cooking very therapeutic. in these crazy times. We need all the therapy we can get, my friends. So let's pop these over here. Actually, we'll put them in there. We're going to, so I started saying before that we're not going to cook our gnocchi all at the same time because it would bring the water temperature down. It would take too long to cook. We're going to cook about half our gnocchi at a time. So, however, here's the point where you pop whatever you don't want to cook into the freezer. So I'm popping all that in there. I'm going to put a little bit more rice flour on just to make sure they don't stick. But before I cook them, there's a few things that I want to do. I'm not going to wash my hands again. I'm just going to wipe on this towel. So we've got our water boiling. We have our oven on. The reason we have our oven on is for our pancetta and our mushrooms. So take the baking trays that I asked you to set aside. We'll have, hopefully don't spill your pepper everywhere. That would be really good. There we go. So 2 baking trays. Well, you'll only need 1 baking tray because you're either cooking pancetta or mushrooms. So we are going to pop our air cured meat onto the baking tray, and let's do that. The meat and the mushrooms are really only a garnish. The sauce is all about the butter and sage. We just kind of want to use this, yes, for extra flavor, but also for texture. So if you're using pancetta or bresaola or whatever you have in your pack, this is how we want it to look. That's how we're going to pop it into the oven. For the mushrooms, now normally I would cook them, I would cut them a little thicker than this, but hey, if someone's going to do it for you, then I say let's be nice. So pop our mushrooms also onto the tray. Splash of olive oil. That's a chefy splash. And then some salt and pepper. We're not going to season the meat. It's already been cured. It does not need any seasoning. Mushrooms, different story. They'll take all the seasoning you can get. So good sprinkle of both salt and pepper. And I'm just going to get in there and give that a whirl on the baking paper. There we go. And then we're going to just spread them out a little. Now the mushrooms, I know your recipe says 6 to 8 minutes. Because they are a little bit thinner, they may not take that amount of time. 6 should be fine. 8, they may disintegrate at this size. So I'm going to pop our stuff in the oven and set a timer for 6 minutes and see how we go. Okay. Now, hope you guys are still with me. Okay. 1 and 2. I'll put the timer on. Let's go 5, just for these mushrooms. I want to be on the safe side. Okay, now also because we want to be on top of everything when our gnocchi cooks, because we don't want to leave the gnocchi sitting around before serving. We don't want it cooked and then sitting around. I'm just going to give this a wipe down, and then we're going to get our salad done before we get the gnocchi in the water. Okay. So I've just been asked, if you're not cooking all the gnocchi, how much pancetta? This is completely arbitrary. If I was not cooking all the gnocchi, I would still cook all the pancetta because I want to eat all the pancetta. And it goes like crispy, beautiful bark. It's just absolutely delicious. But look, I would say cook half the pancetta if you're cooking half the gnocchi. I would take that as a rough guide. Normally, Look, normally 30 to 40 grams per person, just as a garnish, would be enough. With the mushrooms, I would say probably nearer 80 to 100 grams per person. But it's because it's not going to make a massive result, a massive difference to the actual cooking of the gnocchi, because it's actually just, it's a garnish. It's really personal preference. Like I say, I would cook it all and eat it all and buy more pancetta for another day. Now, salad. So in your packs, you received a little, why don't I just wipe that down? That would be really nice. In your packs, you received a little container with, it's got 3 tablespoons of olive oil, so 60 mils of olive oil. It's got half a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, half a teaspoon of cumin, ground cumin. What we need to do is add some seasoning and some lemon juice to this. So you have a lemon, we have our ingredients. I'm going to pop them in a bowl. Just going to get all of that awesome cumin out of the bottom. That's where a lot of our flavour is. Now, what this is going to do, this is actually going to make more salad dressing than you're going to need. I'm just going to bring this over, my little slip mat. I'm going to cut our lemon. So this is going to make more dressing than you need, but don't worry, because this actually keeps in the fridge and it's fantastic to have. Oh, excellent. You got me for longer than I thought. It's fantastic. So if you can make more dressing, pop it in a little jar or a container, airtight jar or container, and pop it in the fridge, and it's it will keep for a couple of days. It's fantastic. If you have salad dressing in the fridge, you're more likely to put some leaves in a bowl and dress it with whatever quick meal you're making. I love having a bit of leftover salad dressing in the fridge. There's always some in my fridge. The great thing about this specific salad dressing, so it's the essential components are the olive oil and the lemon juice. Now, today we've got mustard, Dijon and cumin. If you wanted, you could just have lemon and olive oil, a bit of salt and pepper. If you wanted to get a bit fancier, you could do a tablespoon of pomegranate molasses and cut back a little bit on the lemon juice. It's a completely versatile, flexible salad dressing. So it's really a fun one that you can do whatever you want with. So I'm going to take a whisk. If you haven't got a whisk, use a fork. I'm going to, now we need about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, which I'm thinking is almost exactly that. I'm going to pop all of that in. And I'm just going to give it a whisk so that the acid and the oil emulsify. There's lots of different ways you can whisk. This is the traditional. If you were whisking cream and you didn't have something electric, you could do a figure 8 if your wrist, because your wrists get a bit tired after a while. In culinary school, they don't let you use anything electric for the first semester, so you're doing everything by hand. So you learn different ways. You know what, that's 5 minutes. I'm going to even give those mushrooms just 1 more minute, and then we'll pop them out and we'll let the meat go for another 2. So that's all nice and combined. What I haven't done is add a little pinch of pepper and a little pinch of salt. Okay, give that a whisk. Now, we're not actually going to dress the salad until we're ready to serve, because otherwise it will kind of make all the leaves wilt and it won't be as delicious as it could be. Alrighty, let's move this all to the side. Hope you're all still with me. Hope you're all having fun. Hope you're having a sip of Prosecco if that's where you're at. Now, so we've got our salad done. Our mushrooms are coming out in the shortest amount of time possible. There we go. So, going to take the mushrooms out of the oven. I don't want them to disintegrate. I am actually going to turn the oven off and leave the pancetta or the meat in the oven because we do want that to keep crisping up. And the amount of time of cooking that we've got left won't burn it. So I'm going to keep that in there. But let's see, I'll actually show you our mushrooms. So we can see that they're cooked. They're nicely done. They're on the hot pan, the hot tray. So they're actually going to keep on cooking for a little while longer. So I don't want them to shrivel. We don't want dry mushrooms. That would not be fun, not be cool, not be delicious, more to the point. I'm going to put the water back on up. There we go. That's going to come up to boil in no time at all. We've already got the salt in the water. There we go. Before I start cooking our gnocchi, what I want to do is pop our butter into our saute pan. So 100 grams of butter, look at that, instantaneous heat, that's induction. 100 grams of butter for the whole lot of gnocchi. And look, that sounds like a lot, but actually it's not. For 4 people, that's not. And, you know, don't judge me, but sometimes I use that amount for 2 people. So I've also got our sage here. Now, what we want to do is just take our sage leaves and twist and pull off the stalk. So they're all kind of intact. Now it says 20 sage leaves in your recipe. Look, it's completely, it's to taste, really. I'm going to do that many. That's probably, I'm going to say that's 20 actually. I'm going to pop it in the pan and I'm going to turn my pan on to a medium-high heat. So my cooktop goes to 14. I've got my pan on at 11. And I want the butter to start melting just before I put my gnocchi into the boiling water. Okay, I'm actually going to throw a few more sage leaves in there. Just picking them off. You don't have to cut them up. It's actually, even if you find sage to be a really strong flavour, the butter really mellows it out. There we go. And the emulsification helps as well. Okay. So we're going to get all our ducks in a row for when we're finished. We've got our salad dressing. Going to get I've got my salad leaves in a serving bowl. So if you guys haven't got your salad leaves in a serving bowl, pop them in now. Okay. So got my salad leaves in my serving bowl. I've got my dressing ready to go on. I've got my little 1970s salad servers there. I've also got my bowl, my serving bowl ready for my gnocchi. Have a little sip of that. So, and we've got our serving spoon for our gnocchi as well. Okay, so we can see that, oh, we don't want to lock it. Okay, so we can see that the butter is melting. I'm going to bring this up to a quicker boil. I know I've been going up and down, must be driving you crazy. So even though I've had my gnocchi sitting there, it hasn't stuck together because I've had the rice flour on there. So I'm putting about half in, okay? And what I'm going to do, we've got the water salted and we've got it boiling. I'm going to take it over here. We can see that my water is boiling. I'm going to give that pan a bit of a shake. And I'm going to gently lower, whoop, that's kind of what I didn't want to do. Gently lower the gnocchi into the boiling water. Okay. Let's do that. Perfect. Got a little bit of a sizzle on our butter. That's okay. We're okay if the butter foams a little. We don't want it to go brown. So just keep an eye on it. We can stir the butter and the sage while the gnocchi isn't in there, but as soon as that leaves a little bit brown, I'm going to get that out. As soon as the gnocchi goes into that butter, we don't want to stir it. We don't want to, you know, mush around the gnocchi. We actually want it to, we want to just shake the pan and be really gentle with the gnocchi. Now, you need to have your slotted spoon or a little strainer like this ready. I'm going to turn my butter down to about 9. And as soon as the gnocchi comes up to the surface, we want to get it out of there because that means that it's cooked. So these little suckers are cooked. Now you don't have to drain them too much because we're going to add some of the cooking water into the sauce anyway. We want the cooking water and the butter to emulsify so that you're not just eating pure butter, you're actually eating a sauce. Let them come up. See how they're just floating to the surface on their own? I'm gently scooping them out and placing them into the butter. That's going to keep them warm. See, I'm just going to give it a gentle shake. I'm not going to give it a stir. And we can tell that this lot of gnocchi is almost done because the water is starting to rapidly boil again, which means that there's less in the pan. Now, if you've cooked half your gnocchi, I'm going to turn that down just a little bit further so that we can cook the last half. Pop them in here. There we go. Still, I know I'm dealing with them really quickly, but I'm still doing it with a really light touch, okay? I don't want to be heavy-handed with them, even at this stage, or especially at this stage. If you've treated them with kid gloves until now, the last thing you want to do right now is beat them around. Okay, so we're going to put that over there. Oh, sorry. And then we're going to pop these little suckers just in like that. There we go. And I'm going to turn that water down just a fraction. Okay, so these I'm just going to give a gentle stir to. Now again, look, you can even throw a bit more sage in if you want. I'm going to. There we go. And while we're waiting for that gnocchi to rise up to the top, I'm going to take my mushrooms, just going to gather them up like that so that they're ready to spoon onto the top of our gnocchi. And I'm also going to take our pancetta out of the oven. Wowzers. Okay, so these are really dark. These are actually copper rather than pancetta. So quite dark, quite crispy. I think we might have got them just in time. Now these aren't gonna, because they don't have the same amount of fat as prosciutto, they're gonna be a little crispy, but not as, the fat isn't going to have converted as much. So what we're gonna do is take them, I'll take a few, I won't do all of them. I'm going to take these off. And we're just going to cut them into pieces of bark. There we go, to put on top of our gnocchi. So here we go. Why are you? There we go. The last bit of our gnocchi into the pan with our butter, our little soft pillows. Now, our final step in making this sauce is to actually take a ladle and I'm going to turn our gnocchi up, I'm going to turn our water off, I'm going to take a ladle of water and put it in the pan, and I'm going to give the pan a really good shake. And the heat and the starchiness of the water is going to emulsify with that butter. And you can see I'm just swirling it. I'm not using the spoon to stir it. I'm just going to turn it up a fraction higher and let that cook together. So now we have more of, if you can see that it's a creamy sauce rather than just a purely butter sauce. I'm just going to put a fraction more water in there. There we go. Okay. Alrighty, so we're ready to plate up. How's everyone doing? I'm going to dress my salad, and I'm not going to use all of that. I'll just give it another quick whisk because it's been sitting there for a bit. If this was in a jar, if you had taken this out of the fridge in a jar, you could just shake the jar with the lid closed. That's super easy. So put a bit of dressing on, giving it a bit of a mix. I can hear my gnocchi behind me. I'm going to turn that right down. Actually, I'm going to turn it off. That's good to go. Bit more dressing on. There we go. Hopefully that dressing will become a favourite. Now, there we go. There's our salad ready. I'm going to plate up our gnocchi. So this, it looks like a lot, which it is, but that should. Yes, I did add water to the butter sauce. Sorry. So I added the water from the pasta. I added the pasta cooking water. That has the starch from the potatoes in it, and that's what helps emulsify the butter. So otherwise we just have this really kind of, well, pure butter, basically, pure butter and sage. Adding the cooking water helps that emulsify. So to finish off, I've just added a little bit extra seasoning, and we've got our mushrooms right here. If you're using mushrooms, this is when you can sprinkle them on top. Or your pancetta bark, you would put that on top as well, or either or. Okay, and then I like to put a bit of Parmesan on the serving plate and then have people put more on as they wish. But it's really good to put a little bit of Parmesan on now because it has that extra bit of salt in there as well. And there we have our gnocchi with sage butter and, well, we're actually showing our oven-baked mushrooms rather than our pancetta bark. And we've got our mixed leaf salad with our lemon, Dijon and cumin vinaigrette. So I hope you guys are going to sit down and enjoy that now. I wonder if we're all at the same time together, but basically you could make that gnocchi. You could choose to make a tomato sauce. You could do a gnocchi gorgonzola, which is one of my favorite things in the world, which is, you know, gorgonzola cheese and a little bit of cream. It's such, you always cook the gnocchi on its own and then you pop it into a sauce, and it takes on the flavor of that sauce. But this will be hopefully a lovely, light, airy gnocchi for you. And you've got the flavor of the mushrooms or the pancetta bark. So I think we're coming to the end of our time together. I believe there might be another question. Let's see. But guys, I hope that you have learnt a new skill today. I hope you've had fun learning how to make gnocchi. I hope that this won't be the last time that you make gnocchi. I'd like to thank you. I really enjoyed presenting this to you. Now, if you would like to stay connected, keep your camera on, and it would be really lovely if you shared your gnocchi meal together. So thanks everyone. I hope to see you on Zoom sometime soon. And thanks to XANDR and to all your clients. So great. Bye-bye.